do have some news on just when you talk about the future being bright, or does the future look bleak here? Does it look dark and stormy? Does it look depressing? And well, Tad Prescott himself says it looks depressing here because not only do the Cowboys have to make the decision whether or not they want to make Dak Prescott the highest paid player in the league and potentially give him $300 million. He has 2 years left on his deal, and then he has a no trade clause. So if you try and trade him away, Dak Prescott has the right to say, no, I don't want to go because I want the opportunity to be a free agent and see what everyone else can offer me. So you have to make that decision. And then you also made the irreprehensible decision, the most irresponsible decision, the reason why the Cowboys have less playoff wins than the Texans since the Texans were formed in 2002. They bring back the outdated, the bloated Mike McCarthy.
Yeah, this was one of those things where I said it when the news came out. I'm like, this eerily feels like the San Diego Chargers when they kept Brandon Staley after blowing a 27-point lead against the lowly Jaguars. And I was like, why would you bring this guy back? This cannot be good for the locker room. I don't see them being successful next year. And what happened? Brandon Staley, horrible season with the Chargers. They went out, they ended up being 5-12. They have the 5th overall pick, and everything in the locker room just didn't feel right. And the Cowboys now, they just got destroyed by the Packers after they had their best season, really, of what we've seen all season long. You know, I know they beat up on a lot of bad teams, but on paper, they look like one of the best teams. Their defense was great. Their offense was efficient. So you're like, yes, the Cowboys, this should totally be good. And then they get obliterated again. Same old Cowboys. And then how do they change shape and how do they change direction? By keeping Mike McCarthy, who was outcoached by Matt LaFleur in this game, who's been outcoached by every coach in the playoffs that matter. And then the Dak Prescott decision. He has 2 more years on his deal. Do not sign him. What are you doing? He is 2-5 in the playoffs. He has the worst playoff record of any quarterback with more than 5 starts in NFL history.
Really?
Yes, he's up there with Alex Smith at this point. So you're looking at a Cowboys team. The Cowboys are the most valuable brand in the sport. They're worth $10 billion. This is a team that has 5 Super Bowls, who were perennial greatness from the 70s all the way until the late 90s. And yet, the last 25 years, they have less playoff wins than an expansion team from 2002. They have less playoff wins than the Commanders at this point. Embarrassing. So, the Cowboys, you want to change the narrative? Get a better head coach. You had an opportunity to get Bill Belichick, Mike Vrabel, Bobby Slowick. Anybody else is better than Mike McCarthy. Yeah. And then Dak Prescott. You're outbidding everybody else. Nobody else is going to give him $300 million except for the Cowboys. If Dak Prescott did not play for the Cowboys, he would not nearly get the level of love that he gets. So the Cowboys, disgraceful. Watch us next year. They take a step back because people in the locker room, how do we get annihilated by the Packers? This is a shame. I think they take a step back, and I think Mike McCarthy's gone next year.
Yeah, I think Mike McCarthy you would think would be gone, and our biggest fear was, okay, all of those years that Jason Garrett went 8-8 and Jerry Jones stuck with him so long. So with Mike McCarthy, he's going 12-5. However, his playoff record is 11-11, so he's dead even. So you can flip a coin and basically get the same result on whether Mike McCarthy is going to win a playoff game or not. And the reason why the Packers got rid of him in Green Bay was because his offense looked outdated. His playoff performances with the Cowboys look outdated. You had Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb. That wasn't enough to get it done. You had a dogfight versus the San Francisco 49ers. You couldn't pull out the victory there last year, as bad as everyone says Brock Purdy claims to be. You have Dak Prescott. Everyone was saying that's the better quarterback on your team. You weren't able to punch through and get to the conference championship and play the Philadelphia Eagles that year. And then this is a guy, too, who is 15-1 with the Green Bay Packers and lost in the wild card round. Well, not the wild card round, but they lost in the first round they played in the divisional round, and they lost that year. So this is a guy who was really good in the regular season. He's a regular season head coach, but when it comes down to it in the playoffs, he's more of a Mike D'Antoni head coach in the playoffs, where you had Aaron Rodgers on that team. You had AJ Hawk, all-time Packers leading tackler in history. You had Clay Matthews. You had Charles Woodson on that defense. You had James Jones. You had Jordy Nelson. You had Greg Jennings. You had one of the best Packers team in history there. You were able to break through, but you weren't able to get back there. You were outcoached by Pete Carroll. You had situations where you lost and you just shouldn't have when you're with Green Bay, and then you're taking that same energy to Dallas. You talk about a guy lying to get a job there and how that isn't enough to fire you when clearly you didn't watch all of the Dallas Cowboys film, and then you go into a playoff game against the team that let you go, against the guy that replaced you, when you should have all the motivation in the world. You should have all of your players rallying around you, right? If you're the guy, you see how players rally around Dan Campbell. You saw how they rallied around Jared Goff, and they're like, okay, this is your former team. This game means a lot to our head coach. And this, if you're so beloved in your locker room, should mean the world to you. Look how the Kansas City Chiefs rallied around Andy Reid going up against his former franchise in the Super Bowl, winning that for him. Mike McCarthy has not created that culture. There's been criticisms of why is Dak Prescott playing one of the most complicated offenses in the NFL, just makes it hard for the quarterback, and it's not unique here. You have Tony Pollard in the run game. You said you wanted to run it this year. You didn't end up doing that, and then you just have CeeDee Lamb on this team now, and then it's kind of but it's not saved by anything unique. It's not saved by anything special, and you got annihilated at home after winning against a bunch of cupcakes, and you also went to Miami and lost this year.